So this month, we decided to do international movies just because there was a new movie that was released that kind of coincided with this specific theme. And I wanted to talk about it before it left my brain because I don't know when the next time I'll watch it is going to be. But the movie is A Man Called Ove, which got a recent American remake called A Man Called Otto, starring Tom Hanks. And I figured it'd be kind of cool to talk about, because I watched the Swedish version with my family the other night, and David had seen the American version just like a couple weeks ago, right? 2 weeks ago? Something like that?
Oh, man. I think it's at least been over a month and a half, probably.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like January movie, so it's been a bit.
Either way, we're gonna talk about the seemingly same movie, but we're gonna discuss the differences between the adaptations without having seen the other's adaptation, if that makes sense. So this will be our international movie picks because honestly, without spoiling too much, I really liked A Man Called Ove, and we'll see what your thoughts are on it, David, on the American one. Then we're going to be talking about my number 9 favorite album of all time, which is Taylor Swift's Speak Now. Much controversial pick between the two of us as far as things to talk about, albums to talk about, musicians to discuss. And then we're going to cap it off with my number 14 favorite game. Another nostalgia-driven choice, but a choice nonetheless. Guitar Hero 2. And why don't we just break this puppy open by talking about A Man Called Ove. So, I'll go ahead and kick things off since I guess the Swedish version came out first chronologically, and I saw it more recently. So, yeah, I'll be able to talk ad nauseum, at least for a little bit. So, A Man Called Ove. They call him Ove in the movie, but it's spelled O-V-E. So, for all intents and purposes, I think I'm just going to say A Man Called Ove is a movie about a grumpy old guy who is a widower, and he has new neighbors move into the house next door in this small Swedish village. And
push-ups.
Huh?
Hey, you know how Swedish people say push-ups?
No.
Push-ups.
Ove doesn't do any push-ups in the movie.
Shout out to Josh for the little classic.
Push-ups.
Push-ups.
And he is able to find a new lease on life through, the new lives that enter his life over the course of the movie. It's based on a novel, a best-selling Swedish novel. It is apparently I think the third most viewed movie in Sweden just of all time. I don't know if that's just theaters. I don't know if that's combining like home release, but that's cool. And also, I didn't know that the main character tried to off himself like 7 times.
He does it in your movie too?
Yeah.
Yeah, he tries to kill himself so many times. It's
I had to
crazy.
wonder, like, as I was watching the Swedish one, I was like, oh my God, we are 10 minutes in and already, like, he goes to the hardware store to buy rope and he just hangs it up in his living room. And he keeps getting interrupted.
Does he bitch at the cashier for, like, he can't give, like, a little more rope or whatever? He's, like, charging him for the whole length?
No, in the Swedish version, he complains to the girl behind the counter who's nonchalantly chewing gum. He's like, hey, who made this rope? Like, what? Like, this is cheap rope. And then the girl behind the counter is like, what are you trying to use it for? And obviously he can't say, like, to kill myself, so he just gets frustrated and he walks away.
Oh, no, because in the other one, he's complaining that he's cutting, like, a little under 2.5 feet, but they're charging him for 3 feet of rope. So the guy behind, he's like bitching about it. He's like, well, why am I getting charged for 3 feet of rope when I only want like 2.5 or whatever?
Right.
And the guys behind him was like, oh, I'll pay for it. He's like, no. Typical old person shit. Like he's just trying to save like 14 cents.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like as even before the movie started, I had just assumed that this movie was going to be all about it would be catering to the older audience, you know, like, oh, this is a relatable movie for me because I'm also old and cranky, and you know. But I feel like, at least in the version that I watched, and I'm sure in the version that you watched too, there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more in ways of themes and ideas that they tackle over the course of the movie that are relatable to anybody, right? Like losing a loved one and having to cope with that. The idea of, over the course of time, losing touch with your friends. Like in this movie, there's a really good funny bit where the neighbor that, so there's a lot of flashbacks in the movie that go back and forth between Ove as an old man after his wife passes away, and then Ove when he meets his wife, and then they go on dates, and then they move into the, it's very much like the first 10 minutes of Up, but if it were like a whole movie. And when he moves into the village for the first time, he walks outside and he sees a kid stealing a bike and then another guy running after him. And so they both start running with each other. They don't know who the other guy is. So they start running with each other, and the guy with the glasses, he looks over and he's like, how's it going? And then Ove is like, yeah, it's good. My name's Ove. And then they just both become like the in the town, basically like the neighborhood watch. And Ove is really into cars because his dad was really into cars. And so he bonds over cars with this new neighbor that he met as a young man. And in Sweden, he was super into the Saab, which is like an older car model that a lot of like car heads are really into because of its reliability and the parts and stuff. But his neighbor is really into Volvo. So they slowly, like once Ove discovers that his neighbor is a Volvo guy, they slowly drift apart for like decades as they get newer generations of these like specific models. And then in like almost modern times, before Ove's wife passes away, he's like, you know what? It's been long enough. Like their kid is moving to America and like he's getting married, and like I think I should just bury the hatchet with this guy. I think we're both adults. I think it's time. So he goes up to his friend and he's like, hey man, you know, here's a bottle of wine or whatever. Like, do you want to talk, you know? And his neighbor's like, of course, man, we're friends. Like, let's hang out. By the way, do you want to see my new car? And he opens up the garage, and it's a, it's like a Subaru or something. And Ove gets pissed and he walks away, and he's like, you son of a bitch. And then his neighbor's like, what? I can't drive a Volvo forever. I don't know how that played out in the American version, but
it's the exact same shit.
Oh, is it?
Except it might have been like a Ford and something else. I don't remember the exact car, but
yeah,
no, same exact thing.
So I feel like the only differences in these versions of the movie are going to be like, you know, one is going to cater to American audiences a little bit more, and one is going to cater to like European, like Swedish audiences more. But nah, man, I really liked it. You know, it definitely plays out like a movie that was based on a book, because you get a lot of narration, you get a lot of like scenes in a movie that feel like they were almost chapters out of a book, and then they skip to the next scene and it's like 4 months later, and you're like, what the hell? Why did that happen all of a sudden? Like, you know, first it's spring and then you see snow on the ground, and then spoiler alert, Ove dies at the end, but only after, you know, he's made friends with all of his neighbors. And
how does he die in yours?
He has a heart attack. He has a big heart.
In the bed? They find his body on the bed or whatever?
Yeah, and the cat's laying on his chest.
Okay, yes. It's the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Wow. But no, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I know. I read a little bit of the synopsis of the American one, but there's a scene where there's a kid on a bike who's like riding past the house, and Ove, you know, he sees him opening the mailbox, and he's delivering his mail, and he starts to chastise the kid because he's like, hey man, use the other side of the road if you're gonna ride your bike or whatever. And the kid is like, oh yeah, Sasha used to live here. And she helped me out a lot. She helped out the community a lot. I don't know who you are, but like, have a good day. And Ove is like, oh man, that's my wife. Let's talk a little bit more. Kid is like, yeah, I'm saving up for a car so that I can like, take my girlfriend out on dates. And then he's fixing up his bike or whatever, and Ove, offers to help fix the bike, and then he takes it to the shop where the kid works. And then he finds out that the girl that the guy was talking about was another guy, and he was just like closeted, and he was afraid to tell Ove, this older guy, like, oh yeah, I got a boyfriend that I'm fixing this bike for. And then there's a whole scene where Ove is like talking with his neighbor, his friend, and he was like, hey, are you one of those gays? And then the neighbor is like, dude, you can't just fucking say that.
Okay,
and
that was not in Otto.
Yeah, I feel like, well, because I read in the American version, it's a transgender character, right? Maybe. Was there that B plot at all?
Maybe, I don't know. Like it's been like 2 months that I've seen this thing, so
yeah. So again, I feel like there are only smaller like cultural differences. Yeah, I don't know. What were your like general thoughts that you remember like walking out of the movie?
Like, it was good. I mean, there's some funny moments and shocking how many times he tries to kill himself but just can't.
Seriously, it's like 7 times. Like, he tries to hang himself like 4 times, and then he tries to, do the garage thing once.
And he tries to like jump in front of a train, and he ends up saving another guy, and he becomes like a hero to everyone. And yeah, there's a whole thing about like getting the news team to expose some company or whatever to help that other friend out. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what, but yeah, it sounds like the exact same movie except one is Tom Hanks.
Yeah. So, I don't know. As far as international movies go, I haven't seen a whole lot of international, like I've seen anime movies that are dubbed in Japanese, but I wouldn't consider those, it would feel like a cop-out on my part because I already like anime a lot, and a lot of the anime movies I go see are dubbed in English. And so for international, I was like, all right, well, it's either Parasite or it's A Man Called Ove, and A Man Called Ove made me cry a couple of times. And it was a really nice story. I feel like the actor that played Ove was, he played the role very earnestly, and he felt like a grumpy old man, but like the chemistry between like his younger version and then his wife was really believable and cute to watch and to see. And I'm sure Tom Hanks did a good job too. Like I just have a hard time believing that Tom Hanks can be a hateable character. Like, cause in the beginning you're not supposed to like Otto. You know, he was just kind of an asshole. Yeah.
Like, why are you bitching about 40 cents of rope when you're about to end your life? Fuck off.
Did Tom Hanks also put newspaper down in his car when he drove the kids, like the neighbors' kids, to the hospital to see their dad? Because that was a funny little detail.
I don't remember.
Because like Otto never, Ove never had kids. Yeah, so he's kind of an asshole to the neighbor kids too. There's a scene where, like, early on, the dad next door, he falls off a ladder and like breaks his leg, and the mom next door, who just moved in, she doesn't have a driver's license, and there's a whole thing about like, how old are you? And she's like 30, and he's like, oh my god, you don't have a driver's license? And he begrudgingly takes her to the hospital, but she has to take her 2 kids because she's like, I mean, there's no one home to watch them. So before he gets them in his car, he puts down newspaper like on the back seats, and I was like, what, like they're dogs? Like he's afraid they're gonna piss themselves? What the hell? Oh yeah, and then I don't know what happens in the American version, but he gets like arrested basically for harassing a hospital clown.
Yep. Because
he
he didn't give him the same quarterback.
Yeah, something like that. And in the Swedish version, all he did was step on the clown's extra long shoe, and then the clown tripped, and then the police were called, I guess. I don't know if he actually got into a scuffle in the American version, but
I think he was just yelling at him because he did like a quarter trick.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need this quarter back. And he's like, all right. And he does the trick, but it's not the same quarter because obviously that's how it works. So he's like, this is not my quarter. Give him my quarter back.
Yeah. And then the clown's like, dude, it's a single coin. Like I gotta go. Yeah. So I don't know. I would definitely watch it again if just to see how the American version did certain things. But I feel like in this case, you know, it's a very poignant film about some very heavy topics, and like obviously it tackles them in a way that like it's still heavy, you know, but there's a lot of humor involved still that make it tugs at your heartstrings, and it's ultimately a feel-good movie, even though the main character dies at the end.
Yeah.
So I'd give A Man Called Ove 4 out of 5 stars. Swedish stars. So what are you gonna use? Donuts?
4 out of 5 meatballs. 4 out of 5 Ikeas. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. That's all I could think about the whole time too.
I'd give it a 4 feet out of 5 foot of rope.
Yeah, feet, not meters.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Because we're fucking American. Foot. It's a foot.